Hi, welcome to the first official video of the video series, How to Be a Good American. This is going to be hard. Before we get into anything, I want to talk about what it means to be good. It is important when you are discussing things to have an agreement on terms. So before we talk about what it means to be a good American, let's talk about what it means to be a good person. Now, this is a huge topic. People have dedicated their lives to exploring this question. There's an entire field of study. You could get a PhD in ethical philosophy or theology, and you still wouldn't have the answer. I'm going to push a lot of that complexity aside and give us a definition of goodness that I think we can all agree on. This is the definition. A good person has good principles, and they are willing to make sacrifices in order to uphold those principles. Cool? I want to distinguish between principles and rules. Rules or laws are not necessarily moral things. It is a rule that you need to drive 55 miles per hour on certain stretches of road. And if you go 65 miles per hour in that stretch of road, you might get a ticket, but you are not morally compromised. Rules can be about standing in line and don't remove mattress tags. Rules can be amoral, meaning they have nothing to do with morality. They can be a reflection of morality, like don't kill people. And rules can be evil. Slavery was legal. It was written into the Constitution. It was following the rules, and it was still immoral. These were evil rules. Principles are different from rules. For one thing, rules tend to come from outside of a person, and principles come from inside. For the other thing, you should not have a lot of principles. Principles are guiding ideals. So for example, one of my principles that I live by is that I do not wish to cause any unnecessary harm in the world. Damn the airplane! I'll shoot that airplane down though. I will shoot it down because that's necessary harm. Principles are difficult things in that you have to mold them yourself. You have to test them against the world, and sometimes you have to alter them. But this is something that I've stuck with for a while, and it seems to work. I might find out tomorrow that it doesn't, and then I'll add a word. But here's how this works. I have this principle, and it determines my behavior not in one specific situation. It's not the speed limit on this piece of road. It determines my behavior in a host of situations, some of which might seem unconnected. It is important to me. It is my moral value that I am not going to run someone over with my car, because that's a principle of mine. But I can also take this same principle and I apply it in other situations. I don't want to run anyone over with my car. I also don't want to ever yell at a service worker for something that is outside of their control. I really don't want to yell at a service worker for anything, ever. I don't want to hurt my dog. I don't want to add to the evil of the world through violence or cruel words or cruelty, period. That is a principle of mine. The thing about principles is that the principle can stay the same, but as I learn more about the world and I grow, I begin to apply it differently. So again, I do not wish to cause any unnecessary harm in the world. And I had to put in that word unnecessary because there are times when you can't avoid causing harm. We'll get into that later. Forget it. We're never going to get into that. I'm making things too complicated. Back it up to link. Here we go. As you learn more about the world, your principles can be applied differently. So as I've learned more about the environment, for example, my respect for animals has changed, and they are now included in this. So I don't kill bugs anymore. I do not cause unnecessary harm in the world by not killing spiders. That's why my apartment is full of spiders. I'm still working that out. But the point is, I, imperfect human, can grow in my knowledge and empathy and have my principles apply more broadly than they did initially. That is a good thing. People should grow and mature in their morality. It's all good. Principles. We're in agreement on principles. The sacrifice, though. When I think historically about what does a really good person do, I think about the kind of people who in Nazi Germany hid Jewish people in their homes. These are people who had strong principles. Those principles, however they worded them, meant that they would not allow their friends, neighbors, maybe even strangers to be slaughtered for their religion. I bet a lot of people had those principles. But what makes the difference between a meh person and a good person is that a good person says, not only do I believe this, but I will take great risks to pursue the action of that. The people who hid Jewish families in their homes knew that they were risking their own lives and their families' lives, and they did it anyhow because their values were that strong. The people who made the Underground Railroad possible, the people who have throughout history stood up for what was right and paid for it dearly, those are the good people. And those people are really rare. The people who believed that the Nazis were wrong, there were a lot of them. But they were not willing to give up anything for that belief. There are people who have bad principles, people whose guiding ideals are, I'm in it for me, and it's just business. You have to have good principles, and you have to be willing to sacrifice for them. That's what makes a good person. There's not enough of them. Not by a long shot. If we all agree on that definition, I would like to propose 2 key enemies to being a good person. The first is hypocrisy. That the one kind of person that Jesus couldn't stand were the hypocrites. So hypocrisy is unacceptable. Anyone who wishes to be a good and moral person must scour themselves for hypocrisy and root it out constantly. If you're not doing that, you're probably on the road to hypocrisy. Because it's the easy road to go down. God, it's so tempting to believe the right stuff but not have to do the nasty work of doing it. Who wouldn't want that? The second enemy of goodness is loyalty. I know what you're thinking. What? Loyalty is a good thing. I was once, years ago, at a party where I struck up a conversation with a strange lady who I did not keep in touch with afterwards. And for some reason, we were talking about the Unabomber. So if you don't know the story of the Unabomber, he was a murderer. He sent bombs to different colleges, and people in the mailrooms would open them and be killed. He wrote long screeds about government and intellectualism and how he was right and everyone else is wrong. But most importantly, Ted Kaczynski was only caught because his brother recognized I believe he recognized the writing style. He said, this thing that's happening, this thing the Unabomber is doing, that sounds an awful lot like my nutso brother. So Ted Kaczynski's brother turned him into the police, and that is the only reason that the Unabomber was caught and stopped. And so as I was talking to this woman about the Unabomber, I don't know why anyone talks to me. I have weird conversations, but as we were talking about the Unabomber, she said something that I will never, ever forget. She said that if she knew that her siblings were murderers, she would not turn them in. And I was flabbergasted by this. But her point was that her loyalty to her siblings was such a guiding force in her life that even if she knew that they were blowing people up and causing terror and havoc and destroying other families, her loyalty was more important than the lives of other people. Her loyalty to her siblings trumped any morality that she had. And I left that conversation going, that woman is evil. This has turned out to be such a common theme that I have seen in the world. That loyalty trumps morality, and then people act like they're doing a good thing when you're not. Loyalty is not a moral choice. Loyalty is tribalism. Loyalty is fandom. Loyalty is harmless if it is ruled by morality, and it is devastating when it trumps it. Let me give you some more examples. Catholic Church, some priests are molesting little boys and girls. Their leaders, bishops, priests, I don't know who, doesn't matter. They find out about it. What is their first thought? Is their first thought, it is a moral imperative to protect children from sexual predators? Which I hope it is a moral imperative for all of us. No, that was not their first thought. Their first thought was, I must protect the Catholic Church from the bad news. My loyalty to the Catholic Church is more important than my morality, so I will hide this crime and make it possible for this dude to continue committing it. And that was not an isolated incident. It happened over and over and over and over again. Or, let's look at the police. A bad cop shoots someone, plants some drugs, does bad stuff. All of his fellow policemen look at what he does and say, that's bad. However, I'm loyal to the badge and my brothers in blue, so we're going to band together and protect him from the consequences of his actions, thus undermining the entire structure of public safety and creating an us versus them police force that is destructive because of loyalty. I have loyalties. We all do. I have been a loyal fan of the Atlanta Braves since I was this high. You cannot see where my hand is. It's very low. I was a small child. I watched hundreds of baseball games. I bought merchandise. To this day, I feel deep in my soul that the Yankees are evil and that the Braves are the one true baseball team. However, my loyalty to the Atlanta Braves is below my morality. And that gives me a couple of benefits. Number one, I have never beat somebody up or engaged in any fisticuffs over people liking a different baseball team. It's good because I live in Los Angeles and all of these people are Dodgers fans. And the Dodgers are not my favorite. My loyalty to the Braves is not such that I'm out starting fights over it. I don't even honestly feel the need to tell anyone that they are rooting for the wrong baseball team, even though they are. Loyalty hates criticism. Can't stand it. Loyalty considers criticism an attack. So if I were a certain kind of loyal to the Atlanta Braves, and I heard Native Americans saying, hey, you've named your baseball team after us, that's racist and we don't like it, I might have this reaction. But it's just a baseball team. You're just trying to ruin my fun. Man, you're the racist because you don't like white people. And that would come from loyalty. Loyalty hates criticism. Or I can clack back into my morality. My morality says all people are equal and everyone's opinion has validity, and it is important to me to see other people's point of view and their perspective. So when people talk about the Atlanta Braves, Tomahawk Chalk being racist, I say, you have a point. And I'm going to take it back to growth, because I was chopping with the best of them at one point before I knew better. And then I learned and I grew, and I don't do that anymore. And I still love the Atlanta Braves, but I would love them just the same if they were the Atlanta Groundhogs. That's not a good team name. I came up with that off the top of my head. In all honesty, my first thought was Vikings, but that's already a team. Sharks? Atlanta Sharks? Atlanta Vampire Bats? I don't know. My point being that change wouldn't harm me at all, and I know that. Loyalty rejects change. Loyalty acts like change is devastating. Loyalty is the virtue of evil men. By men, I mean all people, but I just wanted it to sound good the first time I said it, so let me say it again. Loyalty is the virtue of evil people. Loyalty does not really offer us anything except clannishness and protection. And it protects bad things. But we all have loyalties. It's human nature. Our ancestors spent their lives in close-knit tribes where loyalty was everything. Tribalism is in our DNA. It doesn't make it good. It doesn't mean that we should continue along that path. It means that we should look out for our loyalties, examine them closely, and ask ourselves constantly, am I being loyal or am I being moral? Because they're not the same thing. We come from a really unique country because unlike most countries in the world that are formed over hundreds of years and sort of evolve out of conquests and compromise, we are one of the few countries in the world that was formed deliberately. We were formed by a group of people, mostly white men, who got together and sat down and spent really about 15 years between the time that revolution was first proposed and the time that the Constitution was put into place. They spent a lot of time thinking about the question of what makes a good country. What are the principles of a good country? And the Founding Fathers actually laid out those principles for us. They said, here are the pillars, the ideals of a good country. And here's the thing, they didn't follow them, not right off the bat. And throughout the course of our history, all of our great leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., Susan B. Anthony, Teddy Roosevelt, all of our great leaders have gone back to these principles and called us to live them. We as a nation are slow learners, but we do learn and we do get better. What does it mean to be a good American? We have good principles in this country. Maybe we haven't always lived up to them. Nobody is the person that they could be. And a country is just a group of people. If we as a country don't try to get better, we never will. We have good principles. And then we have to make the sacrifices necessary to uphold them. But we have to agree on this definition or nothing else I say matters. So if you see any holes in my thinking, I'd love to talk about it. But I have spent a lot of time pondering this, and I'm pretty confident right now in this definition. So thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next time. I won't see you. I'm in my living room, just talking to a camera. It's really lonely. I'm sad. Call me on the phone. Love you guys.